Okay, so today, President Biden met with President-elect Trump for approximately 2 hours in the Oval Office. White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients and incoming Chief of Staff Susie Wiles joined the meeting. It was a substantive meeting, an exchange of views. They discussed important national security and domestic policy issues facing the nation and the world. President Biden also raised important items on Congress's to-do list for the lame duck session, including funding the government and providing the disaster supplemental funding the president requested. Finally, the president reiterated what he said to the president-elect the day after the election and to the American people in a Rose Garden just last week. We will have an orderly transition and a peaceful transition of power.
Regarding the meeting.
Yeah.
President Biden has given a lot of statements about his concern for the U.S. democracy. Did he share any of those concerns with President-elect Trump in their meeting about what he feels should be done or needs to be done?
So I'm not going to go into granular detail of what was discussed in the meeting. What I can say that it was indeed very cordial, very gracious, and substantive. And I mentioned at the top, national security was discussed, domestic policy issues were discussed. I had an opportunity to speak with the president in the Oval Office right before coming out to do this press briefing because I wanted to make sure that I got what the president wanted to share with all of you. So certainly that everything that I'm saying is sanctioned, if you will, by the president. He wanted you all to know that the president-elect, again, was gracious, came with a detailed set of questions. It was, again, substantive. But I do want to take a little bit of a step back here because it's really important to note, and you're going to hear me continuing to say this over and over again, the importance of having a smooth transition, and importance of having an orderly transition. The president respects the will of the American people and wants to make sure that occurs. That is what he believes the American people deserve. And so that is as far as I can go. That is what I am sharing with you from the president directly. And look, we're going to make sure, as Jake Sullivan was saying, that his team has what they need, right? They want to make sure that it is indeed an efficient, effective transition so that we hand over the people's business so that they can continue the people's business.
Can you say how President Biden answered some of those detailed questions?
I will say that the president certainly looked forward to the meeting, appreciated the conversation, and answered any questions that the president-elect had, offered up his thoughts, but I'm not going to go any further than that. Get Mary.
You said gracious, cordial, substantive. The president obviously hit on a wide range of issues, but did he get a sense that the issues that he was impressing upon, that any advice he was giving was being well received?
I think so. I think that's why the president was wanting me to let you all know that there was a very good back and forth, and it was substantive, as I mentioned before, and I want to be mindful. It was a private conversation, so I don't want to go into specifics or details, but look, they met for more than 2 hours. They met for a very long time, or nearly 2 hours, pardon me, and I think by the length of the meeting tells you that they had an in-depth conversation on an array of issues. And so, look, the president reached out to the president-elect wanting to make sure that he gave an opportunity to the president-elect, afforded him that opportunity to have a meeting with him to talk about the different issues that matter to the American people. But nearly 2 hours says a lot about how the meeting went.
Any plans to keep a line of communication open?
The president is always going to, obviously, keep that line of communication open to the president-elect. We got to remember, this is not about the two presidents. This is not about President Biden or President-elect Trump. This is about the American people and what's right for the American people. And if anything, the president has led by example, right, over the last week now on making sure that we have this cordial transition of power. Okay, Jim.
You said the president-elect came with a detailed list of questions. That's surprising. to me. What was on this list?
I'm not going to go into details of what was on the list. I shared that, and the president wanted you all to know that because we want to be very clear. It was actually a substantive meeting, nearly 2 hours. There was a lot discussed. There was a lot of back and forth. And I'm not going to go into specifics. I think if the president-elect wants to share his set of questions to President Biden, he certainly can and will if he chooses. But wanted to give you as much information as I could without going into too much specifics on a private conversation.
Was the list typed out on a piece of paper?
I don't have. I appreciate the effort there, Jeff. I don't have anything beyond that.
Did the issue of the fact that President Trump did not acknowledge President Biden as the winner of the 2020 election come up today?
What we want to do is move forward. We do.
Really?
No, seriously. What we want to do is move forward. We respect the will of the people. There was an election, as you know, last week, and the American people spoke. And so the president is going to make sure that he puts the American people first. He's going to make sure that we move forward in this process, in this transition process, in a way that is respectful to the American people and to lead by example. And so that's our focus. That's what we want to do. I think the president has shown that in the past week of that leadership. And so that's what you're going to hear. That's what we're going to continue to do in the 68 days that we have left in this administration.
I understand that. I guess that just seems like a piece of unfinished business between them. Did it come up at all?
Look, that is something certainly that I would leave for the president-elect to speak to. What I can speak to is this president wanting to focus on the American people, wanting to focus on issues that matter, domestic policy issues, national security issues that are critical and important in how we move forward as a country. That's what the president wanted to focus on. Again, it was gracious, it was substantive, and I think that's what's important. And what we are showing the American people is how you do this. How do you have a peaceful transition of power, how it looks, and leading by example. And that is quintessential Joe Biden, I believe. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Karine. I'm just trying to understand. I mean, besides demonstrating a peaceful transfer of power, what was the big message that President Biden was trying to convey to incoming President Trump?
I think just that, and the American people. You know, you all had those who were able to be in the room got to see the two presidents sitting side by side, shaking hands. You heard what the president-elect talked about politics being tough, and understanding what that looks like. We get that as well, you know. And I'll go back to what we said last week. Did the elections turn out the way we wanted? Absolutely not. Are we disappointed? Yes, we're disappointed. But again, there was an election, the American people decided, and what the president wants to focus on is what it looks like. What it looks like. To move forward, to put the country first, to put the American people first, and move forward in a respectful way. And I think that was also the message that you saw from this president today. Okay.
You talked about ensuring that the next administration has all the resources they need for this transition, but one thing that needs to happen in order for the Trump transition to have access to agencies and such are these signings of the memorandums of understanding with both the GSA and the White House, including an ethics plan. Did that come up in any way in the conversation today, even if it was just between Jeff Zients and Susie Wiles?
And I was just going to say that, as you know, Jeff Zients, the chief of staff, had an opportunity to speak with the incoming chief of staff. I have not spoken to Jeff on if that issue came up, but Jeff has been leading this effort of making sure that we have that smooth transition of power. We are ready. We are ready to go. And I've also mentioned that the co-chairs of the Trump transition have said that they are in public have said that they are going to sign the MOUs. So I'm going to have to leave it to them. We're ready. And Jake, I think, put it really well when he said it doesn't mean that we can't still have conversations. It doesn't mean we can't engage with our counterparts or those who have been picked by the president-elect to come into this administration. Certainly we are open to that and want that to happen. But I would have to refer you to the Trump transition, they have said they would sign those MOUs.
And back in 2000, then Vice President Al Gore actually hosted George W. Bush a few days after he had conceded the election. When Bush came to meet with Clinton, he then went on to meet with Gore. Did Vice President Harris stop by the meeting at all today? And does she intend to host
So I can say the Vice President did not attend the meeting between the two presidents this morning. I would have to refer you to her team on how she wishes to move forward and her part in all of this. But you also heard from her last week when she talked about the importance as well of having a peaceful transition of power. So leave that to her to answer. Go ahead.
Just to work out a few of the details. So it was four of them in that room: the president,
Yes.
the president-elect,
Yes.
chief of staff, the chief of staff designate.
Yes, sir.
Were the two presidents ever left alone in the room?
I don't have anything beyond what I shared. What I can say is it happened for approximately 2 hours, and it included the current chief of staff, the incoming chief of staff, and obviously the two presidents. I can't speak if the presidents had the presidents themselves, President-elect and the President Biden had an opportunity to speak privately. I can't speak to that. I did ask.
Over in the diplomatic room, right?
Right. So to your point, you are correct. We sent out a pool note about how the President Biden, and also First Lady Dr. Biden greeted President-elect Trump upon his arrival, and just to add a little bit of color there, she gave the President-elect a handwritten letter to congratulate Mrs. Trump, and so also express their readiness to be involved and engaged with her team, Mrs. Trump's team, and so that specific piece, obviously, I would direct to the First Lady's office. But yes, they first met and greeted each other in the diplomatic room.
But Jake or nobody else came in, or
it was just the four. It was just the four of them, as far as who was in the room with the president.
It was in the Oval the whole time.
Yes, it was in the Oval. The Oval meeting was in the Oval, as I just stated, and you flagged for me that they greeted the president. They, meaning the First Lady, and also the President Biden greeted President-elect Trump when he arrived. Okay, Peter.
Thanks, Karine. Did President Biden show incoming President Trump anything classified?
No.
No. Why not?
Why would he? This was an opportunity for them to speak candidly, openly. I've said to you that it was gracious, it was incredibly substantive, and I'll just leave it there.
The last time these two were together in the same room was at the debate. They talked a fair amount about playing golf. Do you know if a plan was made for them to play golf in President Biden's retirement?
Actually, that's not the last time they saw each other. They saw each other at September 11th. I'm going to move on. Go ahead, Ed.
In the meeting, we saw a unified front related to a transition in the Oval Office meeting, but a lot was said on the campaign trail, like Trump is a dangerous threat to our country and our democracy. Was there an apology today?
I'm sorry?
Was there an apology from
President
Biden for the words, some of the words used?
An apology from the President Biden.
To President-elect Trump for some of the words that was used on the campaign trail.
Look, and I've answered this a couple of times about a threat to democracy in the past week. The president is going to always feel obligated to be honest with the American people. What he says still stands. And it's not just him. You heard this from former staffers. You've heard that from the former chief of staff, John Kelly, and others. You've heard it directly from the president-elect, the former president, about enemy of the people. Very, very clear. Very clear. What we want to be also very clear about is the importance of listening to the will of the American people. There was an election. It is important to respect our institution. It is important to respect the free and fair elections. And that's what this president is doing, leading by example and putting that aside and putting the American people first. But what he said still stands. And it's not just him. We should not just put this at the president. His own people said this. So I want to be really, really clear about that and not forget the facts. There are facts here that we should certainly also lift up as you're asking me these questions. Go ahead, Anita.
Thank you. Did the two presidents discuss transatlantic security or climate change efforts and the U.S. role in that? And relatedly, what is President Biden's message to G20 leaders on these two issues and on the institutions and frameworks that hold them up? I'm talking about NATO and the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, so look, obviously they talked about national security issues, mentioned that already. There was a substantive, pretty detailed set of questions that the president-elect presented the President Biden with. They went back and forth on that. I don't have anything. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, into the specifics of what those topics were. Not something that I'm going to do from here. And look, the president is looking forward to going to the G20. You heard Jake do a pretty good laydown of the importance of the president going. It will be his last G20. Obviously, he's also going to go to APEC. APEC will be first. And the importance of meeting with these world leaders on issues and matters that are important to the American people. That's what you're going to see. This is going to be a continuation of the progress that we have made in almost 4 years on the world stage, whether it's talking about Ukraine and continue to support Ukraine, talking about Indo-Pacific, talking about the Middle East and how to move forward here. And so all of those issues and topics are certainly going to come up. And the president looks forward to having those conversations.
I think in this room we've all watched the very somber speeches that the president gave on democracy in Philadelphia at the Capitol, and today we see these pictures of two leaders chatting around a fireplace. There's a stark contrast here, and isn't there a risk that in the future, when voters are faced with warnings about democracy, they're just going to dismiss them and think this is just campaign stuff, this is just political?
I think there are two different things here. When it comes to what the president said in the past year, even more so about our democracy, the importance of our democracy, let's not forget, we saw that Americans do care about democracy. They care about protecting our freedoms. That is something that the president's never going to shy away from. He's never going to shy away talking about that. And it is important on how we move forward, right? It's important. But what we're seeing right now is also a democratic principle, right? When we're talking about transition of power, it is about our democratic principle as well. It is about continuing that transfer of power. It is about continuing that democracy. I know I said these are two different things, but are also connected as well. And so for him to do that, for him to invite the president-elect and to have important conversations on issues that matter to the American people is actually part of what democracy looks like. And the president is never going to shy away from that. And again, were the elections what we had hoped? Absolutely not. We're not hiding that. We've been very clear about that. But we have to move forward. We have to move forward on behalf of the American people. And what you saw and what you're going to see when we talk about transition is about our democratic principles. Okay.
I'm going to kind of try and circle back on this. You said that the conversation was cordial, gracious, substantive. Was there any acknowledgement about some of the harsh rhetoric that Donald Trump had issued regarding Kamala Harris, calling her, for example, a low IQ individual, etc.?
I don't have anything to share beyond what I stated at the top and during these back and forths. Don't have anything outside of that. Okay. Go.
Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question. Was there any acknowledgement or discussion about the election and how the vice president ran her campaign?
I don't have anything else beyond what I just stated. Go ahead, Phil.
I might be trying the same thing again and again.
Yeah,
but you talked about how this was a cordial discussion between the two of them, how the incoming president came with a list of questions. Were there any top-level areas of agreement or overlap between the two presidents in terms of maybe challenges that are ahead for the country or potential solutions? Any areas of agreement?
A lot was discussed. It was a detailed set of questions. the president appreciated having a substantive conversation with the president-elect. I'm not going to go into details. Maybe the president-elect will speak on his behalf on what he wants to share coming out of the meeting. But this is what we're going to share from here. 2 hours nearly 2 hours is a long time to talk about what's important for the American people and how to move forward. And I think that's important. I appreciate the effort. All right, everybody, thank you so much.
For the record, can you just find out if there was any time that the two met individually so we're all on the same page?
Will there be photos?